The morning began normally. Daniel woke up 5 minutes before the alarm and stared at the ceiling for a few seconds. Downstairs in the kitchen, a cutlery drawer creaked. Kate was getting ready for work and trying not to make any noise. The house was old. The boards reacted to every movement, as if reminding the residents, "I hear everything." He pulled on a t-shirt, went downstairs, and stopped at the entrance to the dining room. The smell of toasted bread mingled with the aroma of strong coffee. He wanted to say good morning to his wife, but saw that she was talking on a video call. The phone was standing next to the coffee machine, the face of his friend Sarah on the screen. "I'm just tired," Kate said quietly. "I can't pretend anymore." Daniel was about to make his presence known, but then came the following. "I don't love him anymore. He's good, but everything has changed." He retreated behind the door frame, trying to breathe silently. Sarah frowned. "Maybe a crisis. Previous couples fought and got back together, remember?" "It's too late," Kate sighed. "I tried. He's close, and I'm cramped. There's nothing else." "Will you tell him?" "Not today. He has a meeting with investors, and the project deadline is in a week. If I break down, I'll break everything for him. I'll rent an apartment, take a break, and then we'll talk honestly. No one benefits from lying, Kay, but when you leave, explain everything." "I'll try," she answered in a whisper and ended the call. Kate turned to the toaster. Daniel pretended he had just come downstairs. "Dan, are you awake? Good morning." She held out the mug. "Fresh, without sugar, just the way you like it." "Thank you." The cuckoo on the old clock cuckooed 7 times. Daniel's head was buzzing. "She's leaving." "How did you sleep?" "Fine. I'll leave early. The traffic jams are hellish." Toast in the toaster. "Good luck." Kate kissed his cheek formally and left. Heels clicked, the door slammed, the engine roared. The room became empty and cold. He splashed ice water on his face and looked at his reflection, tired eyes, stubble. When did her laughter and hugs disappear? He asked himself. An hour later, he was sitting in his car outside the venture capital firm's office. The presentation slides were flashing through his head, but the thought was spinning nearby, "I don't love him anymore." To avoid suffocating, he opened the window. Colleague Mike knocked on the glass. 15 minutes until the start. Now, instead of the office, he went into a coffee shop. The barista smiled. "Your usual." "Yes, thank you." "You look tense." "Big day. A muffin will lift your spirits." "Let's—" He sat down at the table and spoke a rehearsal speech into a tape recorder, but the words echoed with emptiness. The reminder, "Meeting in 10 minutes," brought him back to reality. The muffin remained untouched. In the elevator, Carrie from marketing said, "You're like a ghost." Unfamiliar. The conference room smelled of coffee and polished wood as Mike introduced the team. "And now our CEO Daniel will talk about growth." Daniel started the projector. The voice was clear. LTV CAC 4.2, retention 72%, already 12,000 active users. The investors nodded, asked questions. He answered, joked about fixing nighttime bugs. The room laughed, and he felt empty. After shaking hands, Mike pulled him into the corridor. "You put them down." "Cool," Daniel smiled and went outside. It was drizzling. His phone vibrated. His mother was calling. He pressed decline. At home, he was met by a note, "I'll be late. Don't wait up. K." Next to him was a vase with dried tulips. He turned on the light and took out a notebook. Problem: Kate doesn't love anymore. Risks: divorce, loss of home, emotional collapse. Options: conversation today, joint therapy, ignore, let go. He circled the 1 inch and put a question mark. Conversation means admitting to eavesdropping. Message from Mike: "How are we celebrating?" Family matters later. Kate's message: "Tomorrow," he left unanswered. He spent an hour walking around the house, touching the things they had chosen together. Now it seemed as if a thin crack had appeared on each item. Around midnight, he lay down on his side of the bed. The sheet on her side smelled of jasmine. He typed, I heard a conversation this morning and deleted the message. Too early. Plan first, then act a principle that had saved him before. Maybe it would save him now. In the darkness, the house creaked, as if repeating the words he had heard that morning. Daniel closed his eyes and for the first time allowed his thoughts to sound out loud. What if it really is over? There was no answer. But tomorrow he will have to find one. The alarm went off at 6, but Daniel turned it off a second before it rang. He had created a role for himself yesterday, to be a silent surveillance camera, recording everything that happened around Kate without interfering. He wanted to understand when exactly he had disappeared from her world. He went into the kitchen and poured water into the kettle. Conversations with friends, laughter, arguments about recipes, this was how the morning used to begin. Now the silence was so thick that the creak of a splinter in the floor seemed like a clap of thunder. Kate came down 5 minutes later. Dark jeans, a gray sweatshirt, hair in a messy bun. Her eyes looked past him, as if there was an important note hanging behind him. "Good morning," he said. "Uh-huh," she answered casually and reached into the cupboard for some oatmeal. He took out 2 mugs. "Do you want it with milk?" "I'll do it myself," Kate said briefly and turned on the coffee machine. Diary, entry 704. Doesn't look me in the eye. One-word answer. Don't ask how I slept. Moved my mug away, took a clean one. Daniel pretended to look for his charger in the drawer, but in reality he watched her eat standing up, leaning her elbow on the table. Kate used to scold him for this habit, calling it bad manners. Now she herself swallowed her porridge on the run. "I'll be late today," she said, launching an advertising campaign. "Got it. Maybe we should order dinner? I don't know. We'll see." The metallic click of the thermos lid, the whisper of fingers on the phone screen, and the door closed. 7:19. Came out without hugs. Smells like someone else's perfume. More citrus, less vanilla. Always changed her scent when she was looking for a new me. He arrived at work with a 30-minute reserve, but sat in the car and opened his notes. He wrote in short sentences, as if filling out a checklist of software defects. Facial expressions 0. Voice value flat. Joint plans avoids. "Hey, boss, are you alive?" Intern Lily knocked on the glass. "Yes, just checking the schedule. The meeting is in 10 minutes. Should I bring the coffee? I've already exceeded my limit." He was cheerful in the office, joking around the water cooler, discussing code reviews, setting goals. But every half hour he'd open the family chat. There was an old photo from last year's Christmas. Him, Kate, and their cat, Tom, who they'd adopted from a shelter. They'd given the cat to his sister when Kate started sneezing allergies, she said. 11:47. Allergies appeared suddenly. At that time, I believed it. Now I think I removed the reminder of home. At lunch, Daniel grabbed a salad bar and sat by the window. Mike came over with a burger. "Well, have we decided how to spend the investment? I also consider the risks. Enough risks. Everything is clean in the investment documents. How are you? You look like it's always raining." "The weather has an effect," Daniel tried to smile. Mike shook his head. "Seriously, Dan, maybe you should see a therapist. Startup stress is a real thing. I'll sign up." 13:06. The first to guess were colleagues. Externally, everything is fine, but the face gives it away. A better filter is needed. After work, he stopped at the supermarket. He bought her favorite gherkins, grilled salmon, and a bottle of Riesling. At the checkout, he thought, if she's already decided to leave, why am I even trying? He paid anyway. In the car, he opened the navigator and typed in the address of the apartment near the park, the one Kate had mentioned on the phone. The system suggested a route, but he closed the app and drove home. The door was locked from the inside. The light in the living room was on. He inhaled it, smelled of pizza and ice cream. Kate's voice came from the kitchen. "I'll look at the contract, no problem." "Yes, until Friday." "Okay, bye." She sat at the table with her laptop and a pizza box. On the lid was a logo from a nearby pizzeria they hadn't visited together since January. "Hello," he said. "You're early," she replied and slammed the laptop shut. The traffic jams have cleared. I bought some salmon, I can fry it. I've already eaten, she pointed to the box. Then I'll leave it for tomorrow. He put the fish in the fridge. On the top shelf, he noticed a container of salad with a K written on it in bold marker. He had suggested labeling home-cooked meals hundreds of times, and Kate had laughed. We're not in a dorm. Now she was marking the boundaries. 1925. New rules. Her food is her territory. Pizza instead of home-cooked dinner. Conversations are kept to a minimum. How was your day? He asked, pouring himself some water. Normal. Lots of meetings. Was the launch successful? Let's look at the metrics. Kate's tone was indifferent, but not aggressive. He realized that she didn't have the strength for conflict, but she didn't have the interest either. I was thinking about going to the ocean this weekend. I wanted to invite you, change the scenery, he suggested cautiously. I already have plans. Kate didn't look up. What? Maybe I should join. Sarah's bachelorette party, it'll be awkward. He nodded. 1937. She announced the plans, knowing I wouldn't be involved. Occasional days off are becoming the norm. Daniel took out his notebook and sat down in the living room. The television was off. Instead, the quiet was broken by the steady tick-tock of his father's watch, which had previously irritated Kate. Now the hands seemed to be ticking off his invisible existence. He wrote, Friday, 7:04 no eye contact. 7:14 refused my mug. 7:19 left without a kiss. 11 o'clock to 17 o'clock didn't write, didn't call. 18:028 out. 1925 minimal responses. 1937 weekends separately. What are you writing? She asked suddenly from the hallway. He closed the notebook with his palm. Project ideas. Oh, well, okay. I'm going to shower. As the bathroom door slammed shut, he inhaled slowly. The lie came easy, strange, and scary. 20:01. The first direct question of the day. Interest not in me, but in what I do. Apparently, she is afraid that I will expose her ahead of time. He turned on the dishwasher, but didn't add any tablets. He wanted to see if it would notice. The empty dispenser alarm beeped loudly. 10 minutes later, Kate came out in a robe, her hair damp. The dishwasher is screaming, she said. Yes, that's weird. He pressed cancel and took out a pill. I forgot. You always laughed that I forget. Now she shrugged and went into the bedroom. 2018. She notices the mundane, but not the person. I see how she is irritated by the sound, but not by my absent-mindedness. I am a function for her. Daniel lay down on the couch with his laptop. He typed in the search, how to understand that a marriage is over. The links offered checklists, no common goals, lack of physical intimacy, chronic fatigue. Everything matched. He closed the browser. The lights were off in the bedroom. He quietly took off his shirt, but the bed felt his weight and the mattress creaked. Kate was lying facing the wall, her phone flashing briefly. He saw the chat reflected in her eyes, a house icon, a group of tenants. I can't sleep, he said into the darkness, testing the reaction. Take melatonin, came the answer a few seconds later. 23:11. The advice is routine, without interest. Previously, she offered tea with mint and hugged. He went into the kitchen, opened the fridge, and got out a beer. On the shelf stood a closed jar of her strawberry jam. Made 6 months ago, they had argued about who would cut the berries smaller. He unscrewed the lid and ate a spoonful. The taste reminded him of summer, the smell of a campfire, but it didn't bring warmth, only emptiness. The beer was gone. He sat down at the table and opened his notebook again. Borders. Food is separate. Sleep back to back. Plans are not aligned. The questions are formal. Laughter absent. He drew a line and wrote, I am invisible. Then he added, goal by Monday. Keep watching. Don't provoke a conversation. Find a moment to understand if there is a chance to return. The refrigerator hummed in the silence. He remembered how 2 years ago they had spontaneously gone to the mountains and got lost, laughing, sharing the last muesli bar. Now they could sit in the same room and not even share the silence. By Saturday afternoon, Kate will be away on a bachelorette party. He will be alone in the house, where every wall holds their photos. There he will decide what to do about invisibility, remain a shadow, or step into the light and make her see him again. I wrote down the last thing. 003. If a miracle doesn't happen tomorrow, I have to choose, fight or let go. He closed the diary, turned off the light in the kitchen, and carefully returned to the bedroom. He lay down without touching her. The phone in her hands went out. In the darkness, he smelled the faint scent of her shampoo and realized how much he still loved the woman for whom he no longer existed. The rain had started at night, and by morning had soaked the city through and through. Daniel woke up without an alarm clock, checked the time 6:03, and immediately remembered what day it was. Friday. Kate would return in the evening and tell him what he had already heard in secret, but now out loud, looking him straight in the eyes. He felt it in the little things, in the way she had washed his clothes separately for a whole week, in the way she had deleted their photo together from her phone wallpaper, in the way she had said only one word last night, good night, and turned off the light, although she had always added, darling, before. He stood up, turned on the lamp, and opened the folder on his desk. Inside were copies of the marriage certificate, bank statements, and a lease for a one-bedroom apartment in a neighboring neighborhood signed 2 days ago. The keys to the new apartment, a shiny keychain with the number 42 on it, he put in the pocket of his jeans. He had blocked the card on the joint account yesterday, transferred his half to a separate account, and written to the bank to send a new one to a different address. Not because he was afraid Kate would do something. He just wanted to put everything in its place before the conversation so that emotions wouldn't confuse the numbers. Outside the window, tires rustled on the wet asphalt. He put the coffee on, but didn't drink it himself. He took his travel bag and checked it. 3 shirts, 2 pairs of jeans, sneakers, a laptop, a charger, a razor, a notebook, that same observation diary. Nothing else. He would leave everything else to her. The house, the furniture, even his favorite set of tools that she had given him for his last birthday. He decided, new space, new things. The garage door slammed downstairs. Kate had returned from her morning jog. Her gray hoodie was soaked through her shoulders, her sneakers left wet marks. She saw a folder of documents on the table, a bag at her feet, and stopped abruptly. "Where are you going?" she asked without greeting. "To meet with a lawyer," he answered calmly. Kate placed the phone on the table like a shield. "A lawyer?" There was no surprise in the voice, only tension. "We'll need the papers when we decide how to split the mortgage," Daniel said, and zipped up his bag. She took off her hood and ran her hand through her damp hair. "So you've already decided everything?" she asked, looking straight at him, but as if from afar. "I decided to prepare the documents so as not to have to dig around later," he replied. "You were going to talk to me this evening. I thought it would be easier this way." Kate bit her lip. "Did you know?" she asked in a whisper. "I figured it out," he said evenly. "And that's okay. People change." He saw a slight surprise on her face, as if she had been preparing for a storm and had found it calm. "Don't you want to discuss it?" Cautiously. "I want you to feel at ease. If a decision has been made, I will not argue." He looked at his watch. "I have a meeting in an hour. We can talk afterwards if necessary, but there will be no scene." Kate's shoulders slumped. The words "scenes" seemed to have robbed her of her internal argument. "I thought," she began and stopped. "I thought you'd be angry, screaming, or begging for another chance." "I would be happy if you still wanted this marriage," he said simply, "but I can't ask for love. It's either there or it's not." Kate exhaled deeply, as if after a long run. She took off her hoodie, remaining in a wet t-shirt. Daniel automatically held out a towel. She took it without touching his hand. "Where will you live?" she asked. "On West Hill, near the tube station," he answered. "Small flat. Can move at any time." "You arranged everything in a week?" She raised her eyebrows. "Business reflex," he shrugged. "Plan B in case of system failure." She smiled sadly. I've always admired your organization. There was silence for a few seconds. He heard the kettle on the stove squeal, the water was boiling. He didn't even notice that he had turned it on. Coffee? He asked. No, thank you, she replied, adjusting her hair. I need to take a shower. I'll call you this evening, okay? Okay, he nodded. Kate turned toward the stairs, then stopped. Dan, she said quietly. I'm sorry it happened. I lost myself and you together. I know, he said. Take care of yourself. She went up to the second floor, and he turned off the stove. The coffee remained undercooked. At the office, Daniel walked into the conference room with the fund's lawyer, but the conversation about new options seemed like background. His thoughts returned to the house. Had Kate come out of the bathroom? Had she called Sarah? Would she tell her parents? He pushed them aside and concentrated. He signed the papers, discussed the insurance terms, and went outside. The phone beeped a message from Kate. I'll call after 7. Let's do it without witnesses. He answered, okay. No smileys, no dots. At a cafe around the corner, he sat by the window and opened his laptop. He calculated his budget, rent, food, insurance, the share of the mortgage he would continue to pay so that Kate could live in peace until they decided whether to sell the house. There was a small remainder, enough for new curtains and dishes. He remembered how she always said, curtains set the mood of a room. He didn't know what mood he would be in. Mike called at 3 o'clock. Dude, we're celebrating a signed contract today. Are you with us? Not today, Daniel said. Personal history. This lack of sleep again, Mike sighed. Call me if anything happens. Daniel closed his laptop and drove to the new neighborhood. The key went into the lock easily, and he found himself in a one-room apartment with empty walls and clean air that smelled of fresh paint. On the floor lay a rolled-up mattress in its packaging and a box of basic dishes. Everything had been delivered that morning. He put his bag by the door and sat down on the windowsill. The silence was different, not like at home. It didn't oppress, but liberated. Here, no one knew who he had been yesterday. There was no smell of jasmine or pizza, only a light dust of renovation. At 6:55 p.m., the phone rang. I'm here, Kate said. Do you know the address? He answered. Yes. 15 minutes later, she knocked. She entered and looked around. Empty, she stated. The beginning. She walked to the window and looked at the city lights. You hate being alone, she reminded him. It's more honest than the illusion together now, he said softly. Kate nodded, pressing her palms against the glass. I spent the whole morning rehearsing my speech, she admitted. I wanted to explain why the feeling was gone, to talk about how hard it is for me to live with other people's expectations. I'm listening, he said calmly. Kate looked at him, her gaze tired but clear. And then I realized that any words would be an excuse. And you, it seems, already understood everything without them. She sighed. But I'll tell you anyway. I didn't have enough air. You always made plans, I agreed, but somewhere I stopped feeling them as my own. And when I woke up, a wall had grown between us, which I myself had built. I understand, he said. Really? She asked, surprised. I thought you didn't notice. I noticed, but it was too late. Daniel sat down on a folding chair, the only piece of furniture. We both closed our eyes until the crack became an abyss. Kate moved closer. You won't hate me, she asked with quiet hope. Hate me for being honest? No. He smiled a little. But it will hurt, and that's okay. Kate nodded and sat down opposite her on the floor. I brought you something. She pulled a small box out of her bag. Your old college photos that were in my drawer. I thought they might come in handy. Thank you. He took the box and put it next to him. The silence stretched. Outside the window, the streets turned on, headlights and neon diluting the gray sky. What are we going to do with the house? She asked without emotion, as if she were talking about the electricity bill. Let's leave it as is for now, he replied. I can pay the mortgage for 3 months. You'll pay off the utilities. In 3 months, we'll decide. Sell or buy out the share. I can't afford the ransom, she said honestly. Then we'll probably sell it. I don't want to put pressure on it. Kate raised her head. You're too smart. It's scary. I'm just tired of drama, he shrugged. I can't control how we feel anyway. I can only control the numbers and facts. If we had spoken like this a year ago, maybe everything would have been different, she said quietly. Maybe, he agreed, but we're talking now because it happened. Kate leaned her back against the wall. What shall we tell our friends? She asked. That we decided to take a break, he suggested. And when the papers are ready, we'll tell the truth, without details. Fair enough, she nodded. There was a creak of floorboards in the hallway. The neighbor left the apartment. Kate shuddered. It's still empty here, but you can hear everything, she noted. I'll get used to it in time, he said. She looked at her watch. I have to go. Sarah is waiting. I'll show you the way, he stood up. She paused on the landing. Thank you for not making a disaster out of it, she said quietly. Disasters happen when people want to hurt each other, he replied. We're just tired. Kate nodded, took the railing. See you when we sign the documents, she clarified. Yes. If you need anything, call or message. Bye, Dan. Bye, Kate. She went down, the door slammed, the elevator went down. Daniel stood there until the hum died down, then went back into the apartment. He closed the door. The empty room was met by the echo of footsteps. He walked to the window, leaned his forehead against the cold glass, and closed his eyes. Her question was ringing in his head. You won't hate me. He caught himself not knowing what to answer tomorrow. Today, no. Tomorrow, he'll see. His phone vibrated softly. A text from Mike. We're at a bar on Main if you change your mind. He set the phone on the windowsill and opened the box of photos. The top photo showed him and Kate holding their diplomas, smiling, with a UCLA class of 2015 banner in the background. He ran his finger over the image, feeling a lump in his throat, but no tears came. He pulled a notebook out of his backpack. The first page was a list of observations. He turned it over, picked up a pen, and wrote, 2045. She said out loud, It's over. I responded with silence. The documents are ready, there is housing. 0 scandals, 0 requests. Her surprise was the loudest thing I heard today. He put a period, closed the notebook, and sat down on the floor. A draft stirred the plastic packaging of the mattress, rustling like a tent in a night forest. Daniel turned on the adapter lamp. A soft white circle of light fell on the bare wall. There was nothing of his own in this light, neither their past nor his future. Only quiet, even now. He took out his phone, found the name Mom in his contacts. He wrote, Kate and I are taking a break. I'm living separately now. Everything is fine. He deleted the word please, then wrote again, Don't worry. He sent it. The response was a heart emoji and always here for you. He put the phone down, opened a bottle of water, and took a sip. The silence did not oppress. It was like a white sheet of paper on which there was not a single line yet. And for the first time in many months, Daniel felt not pain, but a light, tired freedom. He stood up, cut open the package, unfolded the mattress, and placed it against the wall. He lay down in his clothes and closed his eyes. Tomorrow was Saturday. The first morning without the beacon of her footsteps in the hallway. He didn't know how he would wake up, but he knew for sure there would be no scene. He left quietly, taking only what he could carry in his pockets. And that silence said more about him than any scream. Daniel barely slept a wink his first night in his new apartment. The mattress on the floor was hard, the heating pipes ticked behind the wall, the shadow of a single curtain danced on the ceiling. He tossed and turned until dawn, hoping to fall asleep and fearing sleep. He might dream of Kate there, not the one who said, It's all over, but an old, smiling one with a jar of jam in her hands. By 7 in the morning, he was up, drinking a glass of tap water, opening his laptop and answering work emails. His fingers were running over the keys faster than usual, but his thoughts were reflected as if in cloudy glass. Mike sent a meme, caffeine is the god of deadlines, Daniel liked it and immediately forgot what the picture was about. Notebook, entry 738. Sleep 40 minutes. Thoughts, empty. No appetite. Silence is louder than the subway. That afternoon, he brought home a folding table, a stool, and a table lamp. It took 20 minutes to assemble. Each tightened bolt clicked, as if the house were testing the newcomer's patience. Once assembled, he sat down, opened the delivery app, and scrolled through the categories coffee, fast food, and alcohol. At the bottom of the list, a category called massage and leisure flashed by. He pressed it, and even straightened up in surprise. Profiles appeared on the screen. Girls in short descriptions offered company for dinner, relaxation program, heart-to-heart talks without obligations. Heartfelt conversations, he muttered, snorting ironically. Well, yes, in an hour. His finger hovered over the book button, his heartbeat quickening. He scrolled through each form for no more than a second, but his head was already buzzing heavily. 2 minutes later, the screen went blank. The phone decided that the owner had changed his mind. Daniel stood up and walked to the window. From the 5th floor, he could see the parking lot and the Shell gas station. People were filling their cars, going for coffee, chatting, laughing. He touched the cold glass with his fingers. Life went on as usual behind the glass. Inside it was frozen. By evening, he finally clicked book. He chose the first profile that came up. Emma, 27, education psychologist. I listen without judgment. Price, $250 for 2 hours. Delivery address, at the customer's place. He set the time, 8 p.m. The phone immediately vibrated. Hello, this is Emma's administrator. Confirming the reservation. Payment by transfer before the meeting. He sent the money, received a thank you, and hung there, looking at the empty mattress. 1912. Panic mixed with curiosity. Why? I hope I'll get distracted. I'm afraid everything will become even louder. At 19:55, someone knocked quietly. Daniel opened the door. A girl in a cream coat, without provocative makeup, her hair pulled back into a ponytail, was standing on the landing. Emma, she introduced herself, holding out her hand. Her voice was calm. Daniel, come in. She walked in and looked at the empty walls. Moving. Yes, a couple of days. The furniture is on its way. I brought tea. She picked up a paper bag. Buns from the pastry chef, gluten-free. After all, it's my first visit. I wanted to be kind. He smiled automatically. Thank you. They sat down at a folding table, laid out the cakes. Emma poured tea into plastic cups and seemed in no hurry to get to the program. Your eyes are red. Are you sleeping poorly? She asked. Divorce, he answered briefly. Recently, 2 days ago. Emma nodded and broke the bun. It's sad to chew alone, she said. Tell me what hurts the most. His throat tightened. He wanted to say, did I pay for the call? But instead he breathed out. A painful emptiness. There's a ringing in my head. I feel like my arm was cut off, but phantom pain every hour. Emma listened without interrupting. Time dragged on. He talked about how Kate no longer laughed, how the cat had disappeared, how he carried new dishes like containers for someone else's life. He thought these words were about the stranger, but he knew he was talking to himself. When he fell silent, Emma looked at her watch. An hour and a half has passed. Do you want silence? I already live in it. Then I'll suggest a game. Close your eyes. He obeyed. Imagine that you are sitting on the shore of a lake. The waves are quiet. You have a stone in your hand. Your pain is a circle on the water. You throw the stone, the circles spread out, disappear, and so every time. He took a breath. The technique seemed primitive, but within a minute his heart had slowed. Emma touched his shoulder gently. Enough. Daniel opened his eyes. The time was 21:47. Another 13 minutes, she said. We can remain silent. He looked into the mug. The tea had cooled. They say men hide their feelings in work or sex, he muttered. I decided to buy a conversation ticket. You bought a space where you can be weak, she corrected. Are you working with a therapist? Not yet. Think about it. Not because of me, because of yourself. At 10 p.m., Emma put on her coat. If you want more sessions, make an appointment with a psychologist. I'm temporary Tylenol. Got it. Understood. He held out an envelope with a tip. She shook her head. The payment was in full. Take care of the money and yourself. The door closed. The corridor was filled with echoes again. 2205. Girls for Monino sex, just listening. I feel relief and shame. I bought attention, but it didn't get any worse. 3 hours later, sleep had not come. He leafed through the catalogs again and chose another girl. Kari, 23, does massages. Don't ask unnecessary questions. He set the time for the following night. The second night greeted him with a flickering lamp. Kari arrived in sweatpants, carrying a folding massage table. Where do I put it? The only place is the middle of the room. She spread out the sheet and turned on some quiet music. Without further discussion, he asked. As you say. The massage was professional, the muscles were warmed up, but in his head he was thinking about Kate, how she loved it when he needed her shoulders after training. Suddenly, he realized that he was repeating Kari's movements from Kate's memory. Are you okay? Kari asked, noticing his sigh. Yes, just a flashback. At the end, she gave him a check and he transferred the money. Usually clients relax, she said, putting on her jacket. You seem even more tense. It's uncomfortable to wear old ghosts. Spirits of the past are not driven out through the body, better through tears or words. Here the body is only a translator. She left, leaving behind the scent of eucalyptus. 211. 2 nights no sleep. Money flies, emptiness remains. Body is relaxed, the head is not. Need a plan, sports, therapist. In the morning he rushed to the gym. Treadmill, weights, shower, but the mirrors still reflected a dull face. The trainer offered personal training. Daniel agreed right away. He wanted to write out a schedule, build a timetable, fill each hour with something, just not empty. In the evening, as soon as it got dark, he opened the app again. His fingers were shaking. Laura, 29, a night of talk and wine. I clicked book, but canceled at the last moment. I closed the phone and threw it on the pillow. My heart was beating. He sat down at the table and opened his notebook. List of expenses for 3 days. Emma 250. Curry 300. Online booking cancellation 0. Total 550. He wrote, effect 0, sleep 0. A thought came to mind. I don't buy women. I buy the right to speak about my pain without witnesses. But why do I feel empty then? He dialed Kate at night. He hung up on her. Then he wrote, everything is okay at home. She answered only in the morning. Yes, thank you. How are you? He found no words and closed the chat. Fourth night. He sat on the floor and turned on the recorder. I have 40 minutes until dawn. Paid voices won't help. I'm not used to the echo of my own thoughts. For a startup, I'd hire a consultant, for my body a massage therapist, for the kitchen delivery, and for a hole inside, who sells such services? He turned off the recording and leaned his back against the wall. There was a letter in his mail from a therapist recommended by Age from HR. I accept online, available Monday 7 p.m. Daniel clicked confirm. He signed up for 5 sessions in advance. The price is comparable to 2 paid visits from girls, but they promise a lasting effect. He felt his eyelids growing heavy. He put the phone down and turned off the light. The first ray of morning shone through the blinds. He yawned, surprised to realize that he was not asleep yet, but was already getting sleepy. Come on, he whispered to the silence of the room. Let's pretend you're not the enemy. And for the first time in 4 days, he fell into a shallow but real sleep without paid words, without other people's hands, only with quiet breathing and the distant beating of hearts that once beat in unison, but now parted forever. Almost a month had passed since the day Daniel heard the final, "It's over." The gray walls of the one-room apartment had already been covered with cardboard boxes, one for clean linen, another for documents, a third for random things that he had nowhere to put but felt sorry to throw away. In the mornings, he got up, shaved his stubble with a machine without a mirror, drank instant coffee, and left for the office before everyone else. In the evening, he returned, put his laptop on a stool, and got stuck in a TV series where other people's problems sounded louder than his own. At the end of the fourth week, his mother called him. "Son, will you show me how you live, or will you continue to hide?" "Mom, there's nothing to look at yet. Boxes and a mattress." "Boxes don't scare me. I'll buy a cake and we'll sit." He promised to invite her later, and when he hung up, he found himself still avoiding guests, as if he were ashamed of the raw version of his own life. With this feeling, he went to work, opened his calendar, and saw that he had a free Saturday and Sunday. Mike stopped as he passed by. "Are the weekends clean?" "For the first time in a long time." "Will you come to our garage? We pick at old stuff there. It's a distraction." Daniel immediately remembered. In his parents' shed, under a cover, were his university Honda CB500 from the 90s. The last time he had revived it was 5 years ago, when he and Kate had gone to the ocean. Then the engine had sneezed a couple of times, but had started. After the wedding, he hadn't had time for the hobby. "Easy," he replied. "I'll even bring my equipment." The father opened the barn gate, wiped his palms on a worn rag, and grinned. "I didn't think you'd need this piece of iron again." "I have to take things apart and put them back together," Daniel said. "My head rests when my hands are busy." "Are you treating yourself with wheels?" "That's also a method." Dad helped roll the motorcycle into the light. A light cloud of dust rose above the tank, but the chrome parts were still shining. The rubber was cracked, the clutch cable was rusty. "The carburetor is definitely dead. The battery is discharged," the father assessed. "We'll figure it out," Daniel shrugged. They loaded the Honda into a trailer and drove it to Mike's garage co-op. There, amid the smell of diesel and burnt rubber, life seemed simpler. If a part was broken, you could see it. If there was a crack, you could feel it with your finger. Mike introduced him to the local motorboat guru Igor, a skinny man of about 50. "I heard that divorce throws people either to the bottle or to iron," Igor chuckled, looking at the motorcycle. "We don't have bottle therapy, old man. Only keys for a 14. "The keys will work," Daniel replied, and the boys laughed. Saturday flew by in the sound of a hammer and the squeal of a grinder. Daniel washed the tank, changed the oil, installed a new battery, which Mike gave away until payday. Igor explained how to clean the carburetor. "Don't be afraid, the solvent is like a dentist. It smells bad, but it helps." "Well said," Daniel nodded and rubbed the screws dead from rust. The words Kate, love, emptiness didn't pop into his head. Instead, spark plug, fuel line, tightening torque were spinning around. Every 3 or 4 hours, he turned on his phone, waiting for messages not from Kate, but from the courier with the ordered spare parts. As dusk approached, the engine finally snored. "Alive!" Mike slapped him on the shoulder. "We'll stop by for track days in a month." "Let me get out of the garage first," Daniel laughed. The laughter didn't sound fake. He was surprised at how natural the sound was. On Sunday, he opened the closet in his apartment and pulled out the dusty case with the guitar Kate had once given him, the same one he had used to pick out Wonderwall during their first week together. He took the case off. The strings were rusty, the deck was dry. "Just ruins," he muttered, but he still took the instrument to a repair shop, where the repairman advised replacing the tuning pegs and the fingerboard. "It won't be cheap," the master warned. "How many?" "250 for a complete rebuild." "Do it," Daniel replied after a short pause. He was no longer throwing money around like he had in the first post-divorce frenzy, but he didn't want to skimp on things that made sense either. On the way home, I stopped at an art store and bought a box of acrylic paints and a cheap sketchbook. I couldn't draw, but as a child I loved to paint model airplanes. The cans of paint smells exactly like that forgotten summer. At work, colleagues noticed the change. Lily handed over a cup of coffee. "You're not like a ghost today. What's changed?" "I slept for 3 hours straight," he chuckled, but Lily didn't believe him. Well, Maybe you can tell me why you need parcels from a motorcycle service center. Therapy on wheels, he replied. When the engine starts, I start too. Instead of always being late for meetings, Daniel began to arrive on time and prepared presentations without a tremor in his voice. HR manager Alex, meeting him at the water cooler in the evening, noted, "You know, your therapist works wonders." "The therapist gives you mirrors," Daniel replied, "but you have to tighten the miracles yourself, like nuts." 2 weeks later, the Honda left the garage for the first time. Daniel pulled on an old leather jacket with cracked elbows and rolled the bike out onto the street. Igor held the starter. Mike filmed on his phone. "Ready? Let's go," Daniel nodded, checked the clutch, and added gas. The engine rumbled, as if apologizing for its long hibernation. The bike moved slowly, then accelerated, as if it remembered what it could do. He drove the first lap around the block carefully. His hands were shaking, the asphalt seemed alien. On the second lap, his chest clicked. His muscles remembered automatism. The gears went in smoothly. The wind hit the visor. The hum of the tire penetrated his ears. Lights sparkled between the cars. There was a smell of gasoline and freedom, not the kind that motivational posts promise, but the real thing when your gas and your fear merge into a straight line on the road. Back at the garage, Daniel turned off the engine. He took off his helmet. Sweat was running down his temples, but he was smiling like a teenager. "Your face looks like it's just been your first kiss," Mike joked. "It seems so," he agreed, "only without the risk of getting slapped." In the evening, he parked his bike outside his house and went up to the apartment. The boxes were still there, but one was open. He had started sorting the books by topic code, economics, music. He put down the Hemingway novel that Kate had once read aloud and quietly said, "These pages are for you, I'll take new ones." Then I turned on my laptop and found a video tutorial called Acrylic for Beginners, Sunset. I spent half an hour painting multicolored stripes, smearing yellow too thickly on everything, cursing, but not stopping. The canvas turned out to be an uneven strip of light above a crooked horizon line. It's a joke, not art, but at least it's my own. When the paint had dried, he turned the picture towards the window. The city was breathing lights through the glass. The room smelled of solvent and coffee. Daniel sat on the windowsill and called his mother. "Mom, come on Saturday. I'll bake cookies and show you something." Finally, she rejoiced. "What will you surprise me with?" "I'll tell you when you see it." Saturday came with the smell of fresh dough. Mother walked in, took off her jacket, and immediately noticed a motorcycle helmet in the hallway. Back to two wheels. Back to basics, the son shrugged. "Come on, I'll show you." In the living room stood a homemade easel with a still raw painting on it, a crude but vivid sunset. On the floor lay embroidered canvas gloves, smeared with motorcycle oil. "It's beautiful," said the mother, although doubt about its artistic merits flashed across her face. "The main thing is that you're creating something again." "I wouldn't say it's a masterpiece," he chuckled, but my hands stopped shaking. They drank coffee, ate cookies, talked about trivial things, about the increase in parking fees, about discounts on tickets, about how their cousin had changed jobs again. At some point, the mother sighed. "I kept waiting for you to say Kate, but you never said her name." Daniel shrugged. "It's like repeating the address of a house you no longer live in. It doesn't help you find your way around." "Hurts. It doesn't cut anymore, but it aches after the rain," he admitted, like an old injury. The mother placed her palm on his hand. "If it hurts, it means it's alive. A dry stump doesn't hurt." He nodded. Monday started with another 6:30 alarm, but this time Daniel didn't turn it off in anger. He stretched, turned on some music, an old playlist he'd listened to in grad school, Arctic Monkeys, Strokes, White Stripes. His guitar hadn't returned from the workshop yet, but he was already imagining himself learning the riffs. In the kitchen, he whipped up an omelet, added red pepper, and sprinkled it with garlic. Cooking for one is not so boring when the refrigerator contains products bought not spontaneously, but according to a recipe. At the office, Lily handed him an invitation. There was a live concert planned for the party at the Point Bar. Will you come? He looked at the date Friday, the day he usually stayed at home. I will, he answered without pause. Seriously? She asked, surprised, without any excuses about bugs and sprints. I rebelled against bugs in my personal life, he smiled. It's time to take a break from coding. In the garage, Igor gave him a set of Allen keys. A small thing, but nice, said the master. It looks like the engine did you good. Better than any psychotropic drug, Daniel confirmed. He lifted the tank, wiped it until it shone, and suddenly smelled gasoline differently, not as an irritant, but as nostalgia. He remembered how, as a teenager, he would drive along a country road, when dust would get in his teeth, but all he could do was laugh. Thinking about the past? Mike asked, noticing how he froze. I remember my real parts, he admitted, the ones that were before and will be after. Mike nodded. An important feeling. Don't lose it. The bar on a Friday was tiny, with a wooden floor and a shambolic group of 4 students. Daniel got a soda with lime and sat at the bar. Lily waved at him from the dance floor, and he waved back, but didn't follow. He just wanted to listen. The guitarist struck up familiar chords, Seven Nation Army. The crowd buzzed. Daniel tapped out a rhythm with his fingers on his glass. The music flowed through him, and for the first time, there was no desire to share or write down a thought, just to live the sound. During the break, a woman of about 30, wearing a dark blue jacket, sat down next to him. Alone? She asked. Not exactly. There are friends here. I'm Bree, she extended her hand. I'm also listening without dancing. Daniel, listening and taking notes. Are you recording, writer? I'm analyzing myself, not the plots. She chuckled. Working on yourself is the worst editor. But if you need a co-author, I'm here. They exchanged numbers. No promises, just curiosity. An hour later, he walked Bree to a taxi and rode home on his bike. The wind blew through his jacket. The streets lit up. At the entrance, he turned off the engine and lingered, listening to the silence. But now the silence was different, not empty, but like a pause in a song where the drums are about to enter. He went up to the apartment, took off his shoes, and lit the lamp. He hadn't unpacked any boxes today, but his head felt clearer. There was a crust of stale bread on the cutting board, a reminder of his hasty dinner the night before. Daniel cut it off, threw it in the trash, opened a new loaf, spread peanut butter on it, ate it, and tasted it bittersweet, real. Then he looked at the painting of the sunset. He shook his head awkwardly, but honestly. He lay down on the mattress, stretched out, and closed his eyes. His body ached with pleasant fatigue. The motorcycle handlebars still vibrated in his hands. Guitars sounded in his ears. The bitterness had not gone away completely. It was hiding somewhere under his solar plexus, but it no longer controlled him. Daniel set his alarm for 8 a.m. Tomorrow was a day off, which meant he could wake up later, fill up the tank, and go out of town. He smiled in the darkness. He hadn't yet learned to live without plans, but now these plans belonged only to him again. On Friday afternoon, Daniel closed his laptop earlier than usual. One thought was spinning in his head. Let's try again. 4 sessions with a therapist had convinced him that couples don't die instantly. Sometimes you can pull them out if you grab onto the last roots. He remembered how he and Kate had dreamed of having 2 children, a girl artist and a boy explorer. The dream was still smoldering somewhere under his ribs, and today he wanted to give it some oxygen. He stopped at a flower stand on the corner, chose fragile daisies. Kate loved them for their unnecessary beauty. Then he bought 2 cupcakes, vanilla and chocolate, so she wouldn't have to choose. He stuffed the bags into his backpack, started the motorcycle, and, without any unnecessary calls, turned toward their house. The journey took 20 minutes. All this time, he rehearsed the phrases. I understand that I was deaf to your doubts. Give us a chance to talk to a therapist. We wanted children. I still want them. As he pulled up, he turned off the engine and peered out onto the porch. The mailbox was filled with advertisements. The ivy had grown higher than the railings. The little things that had previously bothered Kate had now taken root of their own accord. He walked up the steps and raised his hand to ring the bell, but a figure flashed at the kitchen window. Daniel pulled his fingers back, stepped back to the path, and peered out from behind the lilacs. There was a warm light inside, and he saw Kate. She was not alone. He who does not betray is with us. Subscribe to hear even more true stories. A man in a dark green t-shirt stood at the sink, washing glasses. Kate handed him a towel and laughed, easily, openly, the same way she had laughed with Daniel. The man said something, she leaned over, touched his shoulder. The air around Daniel grew thick. He took another step back, hiding behind the trunk of a maple tree. "Damn, where's your corkscrew?" he heard the man's muffled voice. "In the top drawer on the right," Kate replied, still laughing. "You're definitely an amateur sommelier." "But I know how to choose company," he winked. Kate stood on tiptoe, took out a corkscrew, and held it out. The man opened a bottle of red wine, and the cork flew out with a pop that Daniel felt almost physically. He watched them fill their glasses. In the refrigerator, he noticed a child's drawing of a house and a sun in pencil. He remembered the sheet. His nephew had given it to Uncle Dan and Aunt Kate for Christmas. Kate hadn't taken it down. "To a new chapter," Kate raised her glass. "And for taking the risk," the man added. They clinked glasses. The glass rang like a bell, and in that ringing Daniel put everything he wanted to say today. The wedding, the anniversaries, the cat, the renovations, the dreams of a child. He took a step toward the motorcycle, but tripped over a stone, and the daisies fell out of his backpack. He caught himself and picked them up. The cupcakes were crushed, the cream stuck to the bag. His hands were shaking. It seemed as if the evening itself was shaking. Kate's voice came through the glass. "Are you sure it's convenient for us to meet here?" "It doesn't matter where the meetings take place," the man replied. "The main thing is that you figure yourself out." Daniel felt something inside him crack, quietly but irreversibly. For the first time in months, he no longer wanted to ask questions. He suddenly realized that there was no secret chance he could bargain with fate. There was only the fact that Kate was already in another future, and he was not in it. He shoved the crumpled cupcake box back into place, tossed the flowers onto the passenger seat of his motorcycle, and swung his leg over the frame, the key trembling in his fingers. "Dan," came from the gate. Mrs. Hopkins' neighbor was walking her pug. "Oh, it's you. How are you?" she asked, smiling, as if she hadn't noticed his face. "Everything's fine," he squeezed out and turned the key. "Is Kate home? I wanted to invite her to the charity bazaar." "Come back later," he said, his voice hoarse. The neighbor nodded, took the dog away, and Daniel stepped on the gas. The engine roared too loudly, they must have been heard in the kitchen, but he didn't turn around. He drove without a route until the road led to the embankment. He stopped at the pier and turned off the engine. The waves lazily beat against the side of the old boat. The air smelled of seaweed and fried potatoes from a nightstand. He sat down on the parapet, put his helmet next to him. The night was clear, rare stars, yellow light from the lanterns, reflections in the water. The scene in the kitchen was still before his eyes. Not so much the kiss, but the feeling that she was home. Home with another. The daisies lay crumpled on the seat. Daniel picked them up and straightened the stems, but they hung limply like rags. He threw the flowers into the trash can and leaned against the railing. "What a fool," he said out loud. "I wanted to save something that no longer exists." "You're not the first," an unfamiliar voice answered. There was a man of about 40 standing nearby with a fishing rod. "Sorry," Daniel said. "I didn't know you could hear me." "The embankment reflects thoughts," he shrugged. "Problems with the girl." Daniel chuckled. "No problem anymore. Now the facts." "Facts are painful for anyone," the fisherman nodded. "Want some advice?" "Let's. Have you tried having a snack? An empty stomach makes you feel worse." The man held out a paper bag of corn chips. Daniel took a handful and crunched them. The salt cuts his tongue, but it distracts him. "She left a long time ago, didn't she?" The fisherman continued. "Apparently so. I saw it with my own eyes today. So your fog has cleared. It will be easier now." "I don't feel it yet." You will feel it when you stop asking the question, why? Daniel was silent. Whatever he asked, the answer was right before his eyes. She had chosen another. He just didn't want to see it before. Thanks for the chips, he said, handing back the bag. Here you go. I have some extra. The fisherman smiled and turned back to the water. Daniel looked at his phone. No messages. He wasn't expecting any. He opened the navigator and typed in the address of his one-room apartment. The screen showed 20 minutes to go. It was longer than before to get to the shared house, but the new distance was fair. At night, already at home, he washed his hands, but the smell of gasoline and flowers reminded him of the visit. He put the kettle on, poured chips into a bowl, and ate one. It was quiet inside, no tears, no anger, only fatigue, like after a long blind trip. He took out his phone, opened a chat with the therapist, and dialed. I want an emergency session. I saw my ex with a new guy. I need to talk it out. A few seconds of dots and the answer. I can be online tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Is that okay? It will do, he whispered and sent it off. Then he opened the contact, Kate. His fingers froze over the keyboard. What to say? Sorry for coming without calling. Why? He deleted the unwritten message, closed the chat, and put the phone on the shelf. No need for confrontation, the plot ended without his words. There was a box of cupcakes on the table. He opened the lid. The cream was smeared, but the taste was independent of the form. He ate the vanilla one, feeling the sugary stickiness on his lips, then the chocolate one. A stupid but firm gesture, to eat a symbol and end the evening where it began alone, but honest. Before going to bed, he took out the trash, along with the flower packaging. On the landing, he accidentally dropped his keys, leaned over, and heard his own breathing wheezing, as if he was letting his lungs breathe for the first time that day. He turned on some quiet music in the room, no words, just the piano. He lay down on the mattress without taking off his t-shirt. The sky outside the window was slowly getting lighter. There was less than an hour left until dawn. He closed his eyes, and for the first time did not try to program tomorrow. Let the therapist ask him what he felt. So far the answer is one, empty but smooth, and this is already a new shade of freedom. But somewhere inside, quietly, barely audibly, a thought stirred, and the dream of children remains. It's just that now it lives separately from the name Kate. He allowed the thought to be, and did not chase it away. Let it remain like an old motorcycle that will be given a new tank, a new track, and someday a new sun over the road. A week had passed since the night Daniel had seen Kate with a strange man through the kitchen window of their old house. He had decided, no calls, no letters, each kept to his own side of the shore. But echoes of the old life still crept through any isolation. On Monday, an email landed in his corporate inbox. The subject line was insurance documents, and the sender was Sarah Harris. He remembered Sarah as Kate's endlessly talkative friend, but he hadn't expected an email to his work address. He opened it. Hi, Dan. Kate's having trouble with her health insurance forms and needs your signature. Can we meet? No one wants red tape. Just tell me when it's convenient. S. A purely businesslike tone. No, how are you? He closed the letter, marked not urgent. In the evening, leaving the office, he saw 5 missed calls from an unknown number on the display. The 6th one a minute after he got on the motorcycle. Yes, he said, trying to keep his voice calm. Dan, it's Sarah. I need to. He interrupted. I saw the letter. It's not urgent. I'll solve everything through a lawyer. Wait, it's not just papers. There was a hint of alarm in her voice. Kate. Sarah, I've seen enough, he snapped. Give me space. He turned off the ringer and turned on silent mode. On Tuesday, he was returning from the gym when he noticed a familiar figure at the entrance to the building. Kate was standing with her hands in the pockets of her coat, the same gray one she wore for jogging in the mornings. Her eyes were under dark circles. Her hair was pulled back into a bun. Daniel paused for a second, mentally trying out his options. Walk past? Turn around? In the end, he approached her without taking off his helmet. You came without calling, now it's my turn, she asked, trying to smile. What do you want? His voice came out rougher than he intended. Conversation. 5 minutes, she pointed to the bench by the entrance. Just not on the street. The entrance hall was empty. The lamp was blinking, like in an interrogation movie. He took off his helmet and leaned his back against the wall. Speak. Kate sighed. Sarah said that you came into the house and saw me with Michael. With Michael. He grinned. I saw it all with my own eyes. Dan, Michael is not a lover. He is my therapist. I work with the method of exposure family retrospection. Sometimes there are sessions at home. He came to help. And 8 o'clock in the evening, wine, kissing necks, is that also a method? He snapped. Kate blushed. He didn't kiss me. I saw. He raised his hand like a stop sign. We don't have to argue about the facts. I'm not part of this house anymore. Kate sucked in a breath. You've always been rational, so I'll explain it to you. Michael trains in safe space. We've been practicing. How I'll tell a future partner about my boundaries. She took a folder out of her bag and held it out. Daniel didn't take it. There's a therapy contract, payments, a schedule of classes. The date is long before our formal separation. Kate, I don't want to check your non-lover with receipts. I want to sleep without pictures from the window, he said quietly. So you won't believe it. I'll believe what I saw. He put on his helmet. No need to write or come. If you need signatures, my lawyer is on the line. He pushed the door. Kate grabbed his elbow. Dan, wait. I'm not making excuses. I wanted to clarify. He turned his head and their eyes met. You already made everything clear when you created a safe space with a bottle of wine. He gently released his hand and walked up the steps, leaving her in the flickering light of the lamp. Wednesday. More letters. This time personally from Kate, snail mail, envelope by the door. Inside, printed text. I'm sorry you felt betrayed. I'm not ready for another romance, and I haven't started one. If you ever want to be sure, I'm willing to come to your therapist with Michael and answer questions. 2. The signature was short and even, as if the bank had notified him of a transaction. Daniel crumpled the sheet of paper, threw it in the trash, but a minute later he took it out, smoothed it out, and put it in a desk drawer. Why save it, he didn't know. During an online session that evening, the therapist noticed his tension. Did something happen between meetings? Daniel told without details. About the window, about the explanation, about the non-lover. How do you feel when you are told that what you saw could have been a mistake? The therapist asked. First anger, then fatigue. I don't want to audit someone else's truth again. And still, the specialist insisted softly. And yet I remember that laughter in the kitchen, Daniel admitted. It wasn't professional. The therapist nodded. Remember the feeling, but don't draw conclusions while the emotion is fresh. Give the facts and time to work. Thursday. Sarah caught up with him as he left the coffee shop. He recognized the voice before he turned around. Dan, stop. Sarah, no, he said immediately. This is my personal space. Look, I'm not interfering with your feelings, but you're wrong to think that Kate, she lowered her voice, was poking around behind your back. She doesn't even have the strength for a date. Thanks for the information, he snapped. Seriously, she's struggling with panic attacks. Sarah pulled a small box out of her bag. Here, antidepressants. I took the prescription, but the pharmacy gave me 2. Take them if you can. Daniel looked. The name was familiar, sertraline. He himself Googled it when the therapist explained about estries. They beg you not to combine it with alcohol, Sarah added, but she drank a glass that evening because she was nervous. He raised his hand. How many more times are we going to discuss the same cuisine? Until you stop thinking about betrayal, Sarah snapped. You're not an avenger, Dan. You're a rationalist. Check your facts. He took the box out of politeness. I'll think about it, he said and left. Friday was rainy. Daniel spent the day coding and turned off his phone in the evening. But around midnight, he went out onto the balcony and noticed a familiar figure on the corner. Kate. In the rain, without an umbrella. He gripped the railing. Should she go up? Or would staying down be a lesson? Finally, he put on his jacket and went downstairs. Kate pressed herself against the wet wall of the entrance, breathing heavily. "Give me the medicine," she asked. "Sarah said she gave it to you." Daniel took out the box and held it out. "Why are you standing guard in the rain? You are silent. I thought that the word sorry needed a physical address. I didn't ask for an apology," he said. "I asked for silence." Kate nodded, wet strands of hair sticking to her cheeks. "I violated the boundaries. Forgive me again." "Tell me straight, Kate." His voice trembled. "Was he your boyfriend?" "No." She met his gaze. "If you want, we had the last kiss in this life." He looked closely, no trembling lips, no shifting of eyes. Truth or deception, he did not know. But the rain poured down, as on the stage of revelation. "Okay," he exhaled, "I'll accept no as a fact. But there won't be a marriage." "I'm not trying to bring the marriage back," Kate said quietly. "I'm trying to bring honesty back into the memories, so that when you think of me, it won't feel dirty." "That's my job now," he said, "with the therapist." She clutched the box to her chest like an amulet. "Then I'll go." She took a step and turned around. "Dan, someday you'll understand. I didn't leave for another man, but for myself." "I hope you're happy there," he said without sarcasm. Kate nodded and walked down the wet tiles of the street. He watched until the silhouette disappeared around the corner. The night passed without sleep, but also without painful images. In the morning, Daniel woke up, sat down at the table, and looked at a sheet of paper for a long time. He wrote one sentence: "I don't know the whole truth, and that's enough to move on." Then he tore up the sheet and threw it away. He made breakfast, turned on some music, and realized that the echo of the old house was still there. But it wasn't a rumble in his chest anymore. It was just delayed, like the sound of a distant train you hear long after it has passed. The rain had stopped. There were puddles on the asphalt, each reflecting the pale morning sun. Daniel closed the door, threw on his jacket, and decided to drive around the city without a plan, without addresses. Let the volume of streets and kilometers gradually absorb everything unnecessary. The image of the man in the green t-shirt, the wine glasses, and even this argument about who Michael was. Sometimes the best proof is time and distance, and the best truth is the one that no longer scratches the skin. An unknown address flashed on the inbox mail server. Daniel clicked mechanically. He thought it was another advertisement. The letter opened without greetings, straight to the point. "Daniel, I am writing with Kate's consent. My name is Michael Goodwin, a state-licensed marriage and family therapist. Below is confirmation of our meetings. February 14th session, Narrative and Borders. March 3rd session, Home Exhibition. I attach. Contract scans. Clinic receipts. An extract of notes, excerpts without personal assessments. Let me explain. Part of the method is carried out in the client's usual environment. Alcohol is allowed in symbolic quantities. Physical contact is excluded. You have the right to check with your colleagues. The goal is to remove false suspicions that help avoid pain. Sincerely, Michael Goodwin, LMFT #. No good day, no sorry. Dry as a bank statement. 8 PDF files were attached to the letter. He clicked the first, a table of dates, signatures, a clinic seal. The second was a check for payment, $300 for the session. The third was fragments of Kate's words, the names erased. "I feel guilty, but I don't want to go back for the sake of debt. He is too rational. My worries are bugs for him that need to be fixed." Daniel read to the last page. The next step is to teach the client to talk about changes to the ex-spouse. The line stuck out like a needle. He straightened up from his chair and walked around the room. The apartment smelled of fresh varnish. He had repainted the windowsill yesterday. The smell stuck in his memory and prevented him from concentrating, but the PDFs kept him from closing his laptop. So there had been no physical romance. So the wine glass, the laughter, The hand on the shoulder were a set for a therapeutic performance. He didn't know what hurt more, imagining someone else's lips or realizing that Kate had long ago crossed him out of her circle of trust. The phone vibrated. A message from Sarah, one word: ignore. Another vibrating call, the therapist, ready to discuss if necessary. He put the mobile down face down. He wanted silence, but silence had long since become an experienced executioner. He took out his jacket and ran outside. It was drizzling. The asphalt was shining. Mike was turning the spark plugs of his Mustang by the garage. "You look like a man who got run over by a mixer." Mike raised an eyebrow. "You want some beer?" "I'll get behind the wheel again." Daniel sat down on the toolbox. "I got a letter from the therapist." "Oh, that same nice guy?" Mike snorted. "What's he writing?" "Proves that he is not a lover. Papers, stamps, psycho sketches. No facts, no betrayal. But there is something else. She told him things she could not tell me." Mike wiped his hands with a rag. "Emotional betrayal, brother. Sometimes worse than bed." Daniel nodded as if he had heard the diagnosis. "You know, she was sitting in the same house, laughing with him, and I was no longer there. Would you like to hear it from her?" "It's too late. She closed the door long before she said, 'We're finished.'" A siren blared outside. Mike motioned for a cigarette. Daniel declined. "What next?" Mike asked. "I understand that the point has already been made," he said. "The papers have confirmed it." In the evening, when he returned, he opened the latest PDF, Personal Goal Protocol. There were the lines: "In 4 months, I'll be living in my own home. After 6, don't worry about your ex's opinion. In a year, I'm ready for a new relationship." Smooth bullets, like a product roadmap. Daniel closed the file. Cars rustled outside. Kate's life was moving according to plan. This was chaos. He sat down on the floor, leaning his back against the couch. An evening in the old house popped into his head. He, young, Friday, Tom the cat climbing onto his lap, Kate reading a magazine, laughing at the article, 10 Ways to Surprise Your Husband. Back then, it seemed like their life was being written together. Now it's clear she started editing alone, even before the divorce. The phone rang. He answered automatically. It was his mother. "Son, where are you? Your voice is somehow empty." "I'm working on humility." "Oh, that's a long time. Dad endured for a year when his company went bankrupt. Then he said, 'It's worse not to know the truth.'" "But what if the truth is sad?" "Then it's still shorter than fiction," sighed the mother. "Come to see us on Sunday. I'll make an apple pie." "Okay," he said almost mechanically. The next morning, he brought Michael's letter to his therapist for a session. He read it in block letters and put it down. "There is no physical intimacy, but the emotional one is obvious. What do you feel?" A strange clarity, as if the report on my dismissal from her world had been signed back in the spring. Clara Miller, a well-known supervisor, calls this an informational point of no return. When a fact restructures memory. Has it happened to you? Yes, I saw her before, I saw her later, and today I found the reason between them unavailable to me. The therapist wrote something down on the tablet. "Do you want to discuss anger?" "There is no anger. There is emptiness and, strangely enough, a slight respect." She was honestly heading towards the breakup. "Next, what is important to you?" Daniel thought for a moment. The words came out without a pause. "Stop trying to fit her plans for your life." Steps: first, sell the house. Second, finish repairing the motorcycle and ride along the coast. Third, think about the children as an opportunity without the surname Kate. The therapist smiled. "Write them down as goals." After the session, he called the realtor. "House on Haven Street. I want to put a share up for sale. Need an appraisal." "Ready to come tomorrow," the agent replied. Daniel hung up. Then he dialed Kate. She answered right away. "Hello," she said quietly. "I'm selling our shares. Realtor tomorrow. Give me access for inspection." "Got it. I'll give you the key in the box without objection." "And thanks for the confirmation from Michael," he added. "Now the picture is complete." I was afraid you would see the betrayal, Kate whispered. It was emotional, but it's a healed scar. There was a long silence on the line, then she said, if you need a final conversation to close the book, say so. No need. The book is finished. Good luck, Kate. You too, Dan. He hung up. His heart was beating steadily, no trembling in his fingers. In the garage, he replaced the last gaskets on the Honda and checked the tire pressure. Igor came up, ready for the big circle. Yes, Daniel replied, and you know, it's the first time I'm traveling without ballast. He tightened the valve, put on his helmet, and stepped on the gas. The engine roared confidently. He pulled out onto Highway 1, the air pounding his hull, the ocean line flashing to the right. There were no unanswered questions behind him. They remained in PDFs, folders, other people's methods. Each kilometer pressed the scars deeper, turning them into mere skin history. At mile 120, he stopped at a cliff and took off his helmet. The wind smelled of salt and pine. He remembered Kate's words, I went to my room. Let it be so. He is also on his way to himself. It's just that their routes no longer intersect. Daniel sat down on the warm metal of the motorcycle and looked at the horizon. Where the sea meets the sky, there are no points of return, only new starts. The morning sun was streaking the highway with gold as Daniel pulled into the notary's office on Bayview Avenue. He left his helmet on the steering wheel. The office smelled of coffee and copiers, as it always did before noon. A stack of papers in a red folder was already waiting on the counter. Mrs. Gray's lawyer had gathered everything down to the last paper clip. The final set, she said, taking off her glasses. Kate will sign a copy at her place and send a courier. Let's watch it together so there are no surprises. Daniel nodded and walked to the table. First sheet, property division agreement. Haven Street home for sale, proceeds split after remaining mortgage paid. Second, banking assets. The joint account is closed, the remainder is transferred equally to the personal accounts of the parties. Third, mutual refusal of alimony, no children, no nuances. Mrs. Gray tapped her pen on the margins. Here is the first signature. Here are the initials, today's date. The ink flowed smoothly, the hand did not shake. The last sheet was an application to the court for divorce by mutual consent. The hearing date is set for the 23rd, the lawyer clarified. You are both present via video conference, 5 minutes of formalities. 23rd, 10 in the morning, he repeated for memory. She closed the folder and held it out. Congratulations. Legally, you are 99% free. The house remains. The realtor found a cash buyer yesterday. He signed. We're planning to close the deal on Monday. Quickly, that means there won't be any cracks, the lawyer smiled. Daniel just nodded. The cracks had long since passed the plaster stage. The windows of the Haven Street house were covered in a fine mist. Daniel had arrived that afternoon with Eddie, the realtor, to show the buyer the basement and attic. Kate was already waiting on the porch, holding a bag of his old ski boots. I found them in the closet, she said quietly, in case they're needed. I'll take it, thank you. He put the bag down in the hallway without stopping to look. The buyer, a tall man of about 40, clicked the tape measure, checking the angles, and Eddie dictated. Roofing slate from 2018, no mold, utilities replaced. Kate walked silently behind. Only when they reached the bedroom did she stop and touch the door handle. Should we keep this color of the walls? She asked the realtor. The buyer will repaint it beige, Eddie replied. Kate chuckled. He'll find surprises from the previous tenants under the ground. Daniel noticed her running her fingers along the door frame where they had once marked her nephew's height. The line, 120 centimeters, was barely visible. He wanted to say, everything is intact, but he held back. Half an hour later, the buyer shook hands. The deal was agreed. As he walked out the gate, Eddie muttered under his breath. The guy is in love with this garden. Get it a little above market. I'll send you a draft contract tomorrow. Great, Daniel said. As the agent's car drove away, Kate spoke first. Was this your last attempt? Yes, I'll take my things and give the key to the realtor. I cleaned out the closets. Your boxes are in the living room. If I forgot anything, I'm sorry. It's okay. They walked in. There were 3 boxes on the floor, taped shut, programming books, a couple of winter jackets, an old record player. Daniel checked them off, everything on the list. He took his toolkit from the storage room. The handles smelled of machine oil, like childhood garage nights. Need help carrying this? Kate offered. I can handle it. He lifted 2 boxes at once. At the door, she held the door open. A warm draft passed between them, the smell of familiar lotion and something foreign, minty. In the yard, he put the boxes in the trunk of the pickup truck and took a white envelope from his inside pocket. I'll leave it on the kitchen table. You can read it whenever you want. Kate nodded and looked down. Can you? Now. The letter speaks for itself. Better without comments. She nodded again. She seemed to want to say more, but her words got stuck. Daniel returned to the house, walked down the hallway as if it were someone else's set. There were empty hooks on the walls. The photo frames were gone. They had been taken down a couple of weeks ago. He put the envelope on the table under the lamp, looked around. Everything that didn't fit into the new stage would remain here until the buyer moved. The luggage door slammed outside. Daniel turned off the light in the kitchen, flicked the switch one last time, and the click echoed with a hum. In the hallway, he picked up his skis and went out. Kate stood on the step, as if guarding the threshold. I'll sign the deal and give you the check through the lawyer, she said. Good plan. He walked down the steps. Take care, Kate. She just nodded. Daniel got into the truck and started the engine. In the rearview mirror, Kate shrank until she was a dot between 2 rose bushes. He turned right out of the driveway forever. The one-room apartment greeted him with a pile of boxes. The movers had returned the things from the storage room. Daniel didn't open them. He left them until Sunday. He sat down at the table, opened his laptop. A letter to the lawyer, documents signed, and to the realtor, ready for the deal. He pressed send. Finances house, divorce all boxes closed. On the screen is a tab with tickets. San Diego, Portland, Seattle, Vancouver. A 10-day motorcycle trip, budget hotels, overnight stays every 250 kilometers. He confirmed the reservation of the first motel near the state border. Departure the day after tomorrow. The clock showed 1947. He brewed some mint tea and sat down by the guitar box. The master had returned the instrument after restoration. The strings rang freshly. He struck an Amal chord, then a G, his voice cutting through the silence, a little hoarse. When the night has come. Learning Stand By Me for myself felt right. A song about resilience, not about someone for. At dawn on Sunday, Daniel packed a backpack, 3 t-shirts, jeans, a raincoat, a laptop, a sketchbook, and a camera. In the bottom compartment, he put the envelope containing the original divorce papers. Leaving the papers in the house seemed like a bad idea. He wrote his mother a quick text. Going on the road for a couple of weeks. Everything is fine. Details later. He immediately received. Take care. Pie can wait. Before leaving, I looked around the room. An easel with a clumsy sunset, a shelf with 2 mugs, a helmet on a stool, minimal geography. There was a route map hanging at the entrance. I marked the finish with a pin, a small seaside town where my cousin lived. For now, point B, and then we'll see. Letter left on kitchen table at Haven Street home. Kate, thank you for honestly signing all the documents. We are completing the process without wars, and this means a lot to both of us. I don't write that, it doesn't hurt. The pain was and is, but now it is quieter, like the echo of a distant surf. We both made a choice, you to go your own way, I not to hold the moorings. The house will be someone else's beginning. I hope the new owners fill it with laughter, just as we did. Let the nephew's growth marks on the doorframe remain under fresh paint, evidence that people lived here with plans and love, however short-lived. There will be plenty of versions of ourselves for each of us. I'm taking my guitar, my motorcycle, and the road north to see what it's like to move without looking back. I wish the same for you in your coordinates. I don't hold grudges. I don't ask for friendship. I just close the door quietly so that the glass doesn't shake. Goodbye. Daniel. The Honda's engine woke up with a smooth bass. Daniel secured the backpack, pressed the starter, and rolled the bike out onto the morning street. The city was still yawning. Coffee shops were opening their blinds. The trollobus was barely humming. He turned on the navigator, but then rolled up the screen the road itself would tell him. The light turned green at the first crossroad. Daniel stepped on the gas. The mirror, which had recently flashed the contours of the past, now reflected only the expanding sky and a thin strip of asphalt stretching north. It was not an attempt to escape, but a very ordinary start without loud oaths, without promises to return. Just movement, forward, while there is enough fuel and while the heart chooses the speed. The chapter of the legal pages is closed, and the new one is already being written by the wind, the smell of pine trees along the highway and the quiet rumble of the engine, repeating a simple, signature-like phrase, "Let's move on." Daniel walked along Highway 1 for 5 days. At first, he stuck to the plan, San Diego, Santa Barbara, Monterey. On the third morning, the map on the steering wheel got wet from the fog, the ink started to run, and he realized the navigator was killing the taste of the road. He opened the settings, turned off the voice prompts, and switched to the old method, I go where it's interesting. Something interesting was found in the small coastal town of Harbor Point, lost between pine hills and a bay with fishing boats. At the entrance, there is a sign with peeling paint, POP, 5412, established 1908. The air smelled of salty pebbles and fresh sawdust boards were being planned somewhere nearby. He rented a room at a Moltsegull Inn, a bed, a wooden table, a window half the wall. The hostess, Mrs. Duffy, asked how long the guest would be staying. I don't know yet, Daniel smiled. But if there's a workshop nearby, we can stay. The boatyard is looking for hands, the woman suggested. Talk to Jose Flores, office by the docks. The shipyard turned out to be a warehouse with a hum of compressors, the smell of resin, and the music of Spanish radio. Jose, a stocky man in his 60s, was planning the keel of a graceful wooden launch. A gringo on a bike, the master raised an eyebrow, not stopping his work. What do you need? I do things with my hands. I repair iron. I do a little carpentry, Daniel answered. I'm looking for temporary work. Jose set the chisel down. Give me your hand. He turned Daniel's palm, looked at the calluses from the guitar strings, the scratches from the nuts. Not a tourist, I see. You're coming on Monday at 7. 300 a week and lunch. Do you agree? Agree. Then bring gloves and ears for the noise. The boats scream louder than a woman's scream. He started his first Monday by sanding slats on board a fishing trawler. Miraclith machine squealed, my hands vibrated, my body was covered in dust. But the longer I worked, the clearer the thought became. This is the most honest noise in recent times. Noise that does not argue, does not explain, simply exists. By lunchtime, Jose had thrown in a new assignment, replacing corroded fittings on a motorboat. Will you figure it out? Your Russian accent doesn't inspire confidence in me, but your eyes are sharp, he winked. I'll figure it out. I love motors, Daniel replied. He removed the old bolts, found identical ones in a drawer, greased them, and tightened them with a wrench. His hands obeyed. Office presentations, flashes of the past sometimes popped up in his head, but the ratchet lever drowned everything out. On the third week, Jose raised the stake to 350. You work as if you were hiding from someone. A chisel like that won't let you down. I'm hiding from the silence, Daniel answered honestly. Good motive. Half of our team lives like this. He quickly got used to the crew. Mechanic Lucas spoke slowly, as if checking every word. Painter Kim sang country under her breath. Welder Jerry showered jokes worse than nuts. They did not ask about the past. It was important that the man held the tool correctly and did not complain about splinters. After his shift, he stayed at the docks, photographed the sunset, sat on the boat's transom, and wrote down the chords of a new melody. His fingers smelled of drying oil, the strings sound dull, But the music gradually warmed the inner vacuum. At the motel, he swapped a chair for a stool at the bar where the locals were drinking ginger ale. The barmaid, Rachel, noticed his guitar and suggested they play Friday's open mic. "We write our name and one line about ourselves on the list," she explained. He wrote, "Daniel is a mechanic looking for the right key." On Friday, he took to the tiny stage and sang "Stand By Me" and a simple three-chord song about the road from the south to the north. His voice shook, but the crowd clapped. He met bassist Todd, who suggested that he practice on weekends in a hangar behind the shipyard. This is how life is written according to rhythms. 6:30 coffee at the Seagull Inn. 7 o'clock, 16 o'clock boats, motors, grinding. 17 o'clock running along the pier. 19 o'clock evening light, camera. Friday bar, scene, 3 songs. 2 months later, the motel owner announced, "We need 4 weeks advance payment." Daniel knew it was time to find a permanent place to live. Kim, from the paint shop, led him to a notice board by the grocery store. Loft shed behind the supermarket for rent cheap, but with one faucet. The shed turned out to be a former warehouse for boat sales. High ceilings, the smell of salt, a hatch window onto the roof. The rent was half his salary. He paid it immediately and moved in, bringing his clothes, guitar, camera, and toolbox. Inside, he set up a camp bed, built a table from pallets, and hung photographs of the sea. The space breathed freedom and wood shavings. When it rained at night, the drops pounded the tin roof, creating a new metronome for his songs. In the fall, the shipyard received an order to restore an antique wooden boat Sea Bell 1D932. Jose put Daniel in charge of the engine. "This iron is older than you. Treat it with respect," said the master. Daniel washed the crankcase, rebuilt the pistons, and found parts on a collector's forum. Each gear seemed to tell a story of decades. Rust chronicled ocean storms, scratches a map of routes. He found himself talking to the engine. "Don't be afraid, my friend. I know what it's like when you're torn inside and there's silence outside." 3 weeks later, the engine roared as if it had woken up after a long sleep. The crew applauded, and Jose raised the crowbar like a cup. "In honor of the new heart of the boat, a barbecue at my place." That evening, the Flores garden smelled of smoke, corn, and cilantro. Daniel sat by the fire, Rachel poured beer, and Jerry strummed his ukulele. Someone asked, "And you, Dan, will you stay in Harbor Point?" He looked up at the sky, where the stars were flashing one after another, and for the first time in many months, the answer came without a doubt. It seemed so. A week later, he signed a year's contract, assistant engine and metal worker. The pay was modest, but enough for a shed, petrol, and a mug of ale. The local paper, which was handed out at the corner cafe, carried a note. "New life for old boats. Flores Shipyard brings back the keel of the Sea Bell." Photo, Jose, Kim, and him in sawdust, happily dirty. That same day, he received an email from Mike, a friend from the startup. "We raised a new round. Come back CTO. We'll double your salary." Daniel chuckled and answered briefly, "Thank you, but my C is here now." That night, he sat down at his desk, took out his sketchbook, and wrote down the following summer's route on the first page: Harbor Point, Alaska. Then he pulled out an old photo of him and Kate in front of the college and carefully put it in an envelope in a drawer. He didn't throw it away. The past is not a burden, but a map with the words, "I was here." He turned off the lamp, climbed up onto the roof of the barn, and lay down on his back. The stars shone like nails, holding the sky to eternity. A crazy thought. If he ever had children, he would teach them to tell the cardinal directions by these lights. For now, he simply breathed the air of the bay, the air of a city where no one knew its entire history, and for that very reason did not demand an explanation. Jerry's old Ford hummed downstairs, and the bartender's laughter echoed through the streets. Life was bustling in the little things, and he was finally part of the noise, not a spectator. Daniel sat down at his makeshift workbench, opened a worn notebook, and before turning off the only lamp, wrote the date in the top margin. May 10, then, as smoothly as he was planing boards, He wrote down everything that was swirling around in his head at the morning shipyard. I stand at the gates of the shipyard at 5:40 in the morning, when the bay is still gray and half dark and smells of cold metal bolts left in the night air. I go inside, turn on only one lamp so as not to frighten the silence. While the compressors are silent, I can hear the fine fibers in the wood clicking. The boats are also waking up, stretching their joints, preparing for a new day. I run my hand along the side of the sea bell, leaving a trail of dust and resin, and suddenly I understand. I already know every pothole here. I can tell by touch where the fastener is crooked and where the wood is still alive. My day used to start early too, but there, in the apartment with panoramic windows, I would turn on the coffee machine and check my email first. My fingers would immediately press the keys. My brain would build slides, look for money, and close holes in the code. I like to think that I had everything under control, although in fact I was simply turning gears in a mechanism that was growing faster than I could understand. Now, instead of keys, there is a wrench. Instead of a coffee machine, there is a thermos with black, sugar-free coffee. And I know that previous person did not die. He simply dissolved, like salt in water. He created a solution from which a new sediment fell out my composition today without unnecessary impurities. I often hear people compare divorce to a shipwreck. First the shock, then the panic, then the scramble for a life preserver. For me, it was different. The ship creaked for a long time, the seams came apart by the millimeter, and one day I noticed that we were already aground. There was no water under the keel, but I was still running around the deck shouting for the oars to be handed out. It was only when I saw Kate through the kitchen window that I realized the ship was gone, a berth for someone else. Then I disappeared, too, to that world of joint accounts, plans for children, weekly reports on LTV and CAC. Not heroism, not escape. I simply turned off the switch, went beyond the horizon, where no one knows who I should be. If someone had told me then that I would be smearing cracked frames with resin and writing songs in the evenings in an abandoned barn, I would have laughed. But it turned out that there are millions of niches in the world where you can stand when you no longer fit into your old uniform. I chose the one where your hands ache by the end of the shift, where your nails are soaked with oil that they can't be washed off even with a brush, but there is silence in your chest. No outbursts of anxiety, no endless dialogues about KPIs. I disappeared from my investor friends, from Slack channels, from the queue of startup conferences. Mike wrote a couple of times, urging me to come back. I am grateful, but coming back means putting on a shirt that is chafing at the seams. I have already taken it off and sent it to be recycled. Kate sent me one last letter after selling the house. I hope you are happy. I read it on a bench by the water, responded only with "you too," and archived the correspondence. We both disappeared from each other's frame, and that is right. Otherwise, old shadows will stand between me and the next board that needs to be planned. In the shop, I can hear Jose coming in, grumbling in Spanish, clicking the radio. He always turns on one station, which has the news in the morning, Latin rock in the afternoon, and a Dodgers game at night. This monotonous cycle is calming. It means there is some core that does not waver while we fiddle with our storms. I nod to Jose, he throws me gloves and says, "Today we are installing an engine on the Claire. Long propeller, be careful with the splines." In another life, I would have been asked to give a presentation before lunch, but here everything is simpler. Screw the splines in crookedly, and the boat will not leave the harbor. It will be your own fault. Honest mathematics. It probably seems to an outsider that I have reduced my ambitions. I was a CEO, then became a car mechanic on the water. But I see a different scale. Before, I built a product to sell it. Now I repair a ship so that it floats. Before, there were numbers without skin. Now there is a board that smells of the forest. No romance, my back hurts in the evenings. But this pain is human, not phantom, like when two people sleep in the same bed and are afraid to touch. Around midday, Lucas starts the compressor, the metal grinds, and I feel a precise metronome inside. Every job has its cycle. Feed the part, try it on, clamp it, check it. After a month here, you realize that the nature of rhythm is more important than quick wins. No one demands, Increase the pace by 30% by the end of the quarter, because if you rush, the board will break and the shipyard will make a loss that cannot be covered by the next round. In the evening, I walk along the waterfront. To the left are boats with fresh paint patches. To the right is a small bar where they still have a poster with my name on it for Friday's open mic. I'm not a star in Harbor Point, but people now know. Hey, guitar mechanic, play about the road. Sometimes I play, sometimes I just drink non-alcoholic ale and listen to other people's voices. Everyone here has lost something. Rachel's brother died, Jose has family in Mexico, Jerry's wife ran off with a bluegrass musician. No one wears their pain like a medal, but they don't hide it either. They sit and breathe next to them. This is how I learned to be with people without trying to fix them, the way I used to try to fix Kate without asking if she needed a diagnosis. At night, when the rain hits the tin roof, I hear the steady pattern of drops and think, this is my new time code for life. Drip, drip seconds. Between them, there are emptinesses and pauses, but it is they that make the rhythm recognizable. I remember Kate's smiling face from the past, then the muffled laughter of that kitchen I once peered into from the outside. Does it hurt? Yes, but the pain is no longer the main note. It has faded into the background, like an old scar that reacts to the weather but does not prevent you from picking up an instrument. The most amazing thing is that I am no longer trying to rewrite history. There is no desire to prove that I was right, that I was underestimated, that someone should repent. I am not a hero, not an avenger, not even a philosopher. Just a person who, for the first time, gave up trying to be an ideal version of himself. I am left with what works: hands, a slightly hoarse voice, the ability to understand engines, and people who hide the sound of their hearts behind jokes. This is enough to feel. I am not lost. I have become more whole. Sometimes, as I walk along the pier, I stop and look at the water. The moonlight leads a long path into the darkness, and a strange feeling comes over me, not longing, not fear, but a quiet curiosity. Where once the question was, what next? Now the sound is, we'll see. Life is no longer a chess game with rating points. It has become a series of boards that either lie flat or need to be planned. I don't know if I'll see Kate again. Maybe by chance at the airport, maybe never. If I do, I'll smile and move on. She'd see a different person, not the Dan who gave the presentation on the future of the unicorn, and not the invisible man who kept a diary of her indifference, but a man in a shabby jacket smelling of pine resin who simply lives at his own pace. Sometimes I think about children. The dream is not dead, it just took off its last name. If one day I meet a woman with whom our rhythms coincide, perhaps there will be a new house, maybe a small workshop where a child will hide a toy ship in the wood shavings. But I don't make plans like skyscrapers anymore. I build pier decks, plank by plank, so that there will be somewhere to step tomorrow. Jose invites us to dinner. He has another victory. The Claire was launched without losing power. We sat at a long table, eating tacos, listening to Jerry waving his spoon, telling a story about an albino crab. I laugh so hard my cheeks hurt and catch Rachel's eye. She nods, as if to say, "You're there now." Yes, I have disappeared for one world. There are still stocks, chats, briefs. Perhaps they remember my ghost as CEO who suddenly left. But that ghost has taken on flesh here, among the boards and salt dust. I do not try to loudly announce my return. I simply stand at the gate of the shipyard in the morning, turn the key in the old Devinger, listen to the engine take its first breath, and I know. As the engine comes to life, I come to life too. And if tomorrow this shipyard closes, I will be able to assemble motorcycles, build terraces, cut stone, and write songs. It doesn't matter what exactly. What matters is that it will be made by my hands and will be alive. I have survived the calm and the storm. I have chosen movement and the earth beneath my feet. Everything else will follow. My badge hangs on a sign at the entrance, Daniel Motors. Previously, I would have considered this a demotion. Now I look at it and think, an accurate definition. I really am a motor, only I no longer hum in vain for the sake of other people's routes. I pull my boat forward, and someday, perhaps, I will go out to the open sea. But even if not, The local bay is enough for me. I am the last one to leave the workshop, turning off the light. There are big stars in the sky, like ports on a navigation screen, and every light whispers, the course is clear. I'm not that person anymore. I'm the real me. Daniel underlined, clicked his pen, and carefully closed the notebook. It was a personal life verification, not a heroic manifesto, but a quiet confirmation to himself that his disappearance from one world had become his birth into another. Now, if doubt ever stormed in again, he would open these pages and hear the same steady rhythm of dripping on the tin roof, drip, drip, I'm here, I'm whole. We are creating a community of people who are interested in unusual stories. Subscribe to stay up to date with what's new. Together we learn, grow, and inspire each other without judgment, with respect and warmth. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.